Welcome to the video how to test service layer in Spring Boot with me, Nam Haming from CodeJava.net. Through this video, I will help you understand the key principles in testing the business or service layer in Spring Boot, and you will learn how to write unit tests for testing the business or service components in a Spring Boot project. And to demonstrate how to test the service layer, we write code for an existing Java project that is using the following technologies: Spring Boot, including the starter for Spring Web, Spring Data JPA, Spring Test, and most importantly is JUnit 5 or JUnit Jupiter as the unit testing framework, and Mockito as the mocking framework to make fake objects to be used in unit testing. And through this video, I'm using the following software programs: Java Development Kit JDK and Spring 2 Suite IDE SDS. Basically, in a Spring Boot project, we often separate the code into some logical layers like this: the data access layer, business or service layer, and controller layer. In the data access layer, we have repositories and entity classes using Spring Data JPA to access the database via Hibernate framework and JDBC driver. And in the business or service layer, we have the services class that implement business logics for the application. And in the controller layer, we have controller classes to handle requests from clients. And in this video tutorial, I will focus on how to write unit tests to test the business or service component in the business or service layer in a Spring Boot application. This picture explains how to write a unit test class for a service class in a Spring Boot project. You see, so the service class becomes the class under test. As you can see, is a services class in this picture, and the test class is a services test here. This is a test class, and as you can see, because a service class or business class usually depends on some dependencies, usually a repository like this is a repository, but since we focused on testing the services class here, testing the business or service class, so we don't test the real repository, or we don't test controller layer. We just test the business or service class. That's why we need to use a Mockito, a mocking framework, to make fake objects for the repository here, as you can see. So in this test class, we need to use some annotation like mockbin and inject mocks to create mock object for the repository for the dependency, and inject the mock object into the service or business class. So I hope you understand the key principle in testing services in Spring Boot. Here are some key principles in writing unit tests for testing the service layer in Spring Boot. We test only the business methods in the service class, and for all the dependency of the service class, we create a mock objects for all the dependencies, and we also mock the data for the dependencies, or in other words, we create dummy data for the input and output required by the dependencies. So we can focus on testing only the business methods of the service class. Now, let me show you how to write code in action. So as you can see, I have an existing Spring Boot project in Spring 2 Suite IDE here. And to use Spring Boot testing, you need to declare this dependency Spring Boot starter test, and exclude the JUnit vintage, which is for running a JUnit for test. And when you declare this Spring Boot start a test, it will automatically um, include all the required dependency Java files for unit testing with JUnit 5 and Mockito for the mocking frameworks. As you can see here, JUnit Platform, JUnit Jupiter, and Mockito, JUnit Jupiter here, Mockito Core here. So you can use JUnit 5 with Mockito for unit testing the service layer in this Spring Boot project. Just declare this dependency. And we want to write unit test for the user services class here. As you can see, we want to test this business method in the user services class is unique email violated because the entity class user here, each user must have an unique email. So when creating new or updating an existing user, we must ensure that the email of the user is unique and it doesn't duplicate email of other users in the database. So this business method in the service class is to check the uniqueness of the email of a user being created or being updated. And we want to write unit test to test this method in the user service class here. So we focus on testing this logic code in this method, and we don't care about the repository get user by email method here. Now let's create a new test class. The class under test is user services, and the test class here we create a new test class here in the test package. The class name is user service test. And to use Mockito to mock the repository object, as you can see in the user service class, it depends on user repository here, but we focused on testing this service class only. We don't care about the repository which is used to invoke this method. So we need to use the Mockito to create mock object for the user repository here. So we use the annotation mock bin here, mock bin private user repository report. So Mockito framework, we automatically generate create a mock object, fake object for the user repository here, and then we need to inject the mock object of the user repository into the service class. So we use this annotation inject mocks before the declaration of the service class user services service here. That's it. And then the test method, and we test for the first case. Test unique email when creating new user. And as you can see, this is a method we want to test is a unique email violated, and it takes two parameters: ID of the user and email of the user. So we in this first test method we declare the user ID integer user ID in null and string user email is some value, for example tommy@gmail.com, and then we use Mockito to mock the data input output for this business method. So we use Mockito and the method when repo let's see the method repo get user by email here. When the method of the get user by email method here, user email of the repository, then return a value. So this is to mock to get fake input and output for the method of the repository, then return. And we, as you can see in the real method, get user by email, it returns a user object. So here we return a mock object user equal new user. We set the ID for this. This will return a no user in this test method. That's it. So when we pass the email to me, this email, it will return a no object user. So that means the email uniqueness is in this method should be the method here should return false because no user associated with this email, and boolean result equal to service is unique email validated with passing the user ID and user email, as you can see here. And we assert that the result is false, meaning that the email is unique. You see, I hope you understand the logic. We use Mockito API to mock the repository object and also mock the return data for the method of the repository get user by email here. And in this test case, given this email, it will return no. That means no user associated with this email. So the method is unique email validated should return false. And to run this service test class, we need to use the annotation extend with from the unit, and we need to use the extension Mockito extension here dot class, and we also need to use the extend with spring extension dot class to be able to run the unit test with Mockito framework. That's it for the first test method. And now let's run this test method. So the outline view run as the unit test. And you see the test has been passed successfully here with a green check mark, green indicator bar here. That means we have tested this method in the service class for the first case. Test unique email when creating new user. For more readability of the test method name, I change the test method to should return false when email is unique. So it is more readable, right? Now let's write the second test method for the case that the email is not unique. There's already a user having that email in the database. For example, public void should return true when email is not unique. And in this case, the ID of the user is also no. We copy you can copy this whole code and modify the same email, but this time we return a new user object. User equal new user. This user has the same email, set email, user email, and it has ID, set ID, for example ID1 user. And in this case, we expect that the is unique email validated to return true. So we use a assert statement, assert true from the unit API. That's it for the case that it should return true when email is not unique, because there already a user with the same email. Okay, now let's run this second test method. And you can see the test succeeded here. Awesome, right? So that's basically how to write unit tests for testing the service class in Spring Boot project. You need to use mock bin annotation to create mock object for the dependency for the service class, and then inject mock objects into the service class. And to run the test, you need to extend with the Mockito extension and Spring extension here. Similarly, in this project, I also have another service class that needs to be tested. Category services here, as you can see in this category service C class, it also has a business method check the uniqueness of a category based on name and alias of the category. And in a category there are two fields, name and alias should be unique in the database. So let's write a test, create a new test class under category here, new class. The class name is category service test. And to run this test with Mockito, we need to extend with Mockito extension. Mockito extension, not class, and also extend with Spring extension. Spring extension, not class. And we create a mock object for the dependency of the service category service C class. As you can see in this category service C class, it has the dependency onto the category repository here. So we create a mock bin, and declare the type of the bin we want to create a mock object for, which is category repository here, report. and then we inject the mock bin into the class under test, which is a category service class. Category service here, service. That's it, and then we write the first test method, public void test check unique in new mode with duplicate name. That's it. And you can see in the business method check unit here, it requires 3 parameters: ID of the category, name of the category, and alias of the category. And it uses a repository to find by name and find by alias here. So that means in the test method, we need to provide mock data for these two methods of the repository, find by name and find by alias here. But we declare the ID first, integer ID equal no, and the category name is electronics, and alias is for example A B C D E F, and we mock the return data for the repository called mokito when variable find by name method is invoked with the given name here. As you can see in the business method here, find by name is invoked. Then return, and we return a new category object. So we create a new category object here. Category equal new category. And we set the ID. Set ID 1. Set alias is the alias. And that's it. And here we return the category. And we'll also need to provide mock return value for the find by alias method here. So we call Mockito when repo find by alias with a given alias here, and we return no. Then return no, and we get the return value from the service method. String result equal service check unique, passing the ID, name, and alias here. This business method check unique here returns a string duplicated name, duplicated alias, or okay, meaning that there's no duplication. The name and alias of the category is unique, and otherwise we return duplicated name if the name is duplicated, or duplicated alias if the alias is duplicated. So in this case, we expect that it will return duplicated name. You see, with the given name of the category is electronics, and the find by name method return a category object with ID greater than 0. That means there's already a category object before that, so it should return duplicated name. So we use a assert equals method result actual is duplicated name. That's it. And run this test method. Run as the unit test. You can see the test has been passed successfully. Okay, so I think you don't care about the business of the service class here. What important is how to write unit test with Mockito using this annotation. You see. So far, you have learned how to write unit tests for the service layer in a Spring Boot project. And the key principles, we test only the business methods in service class, mock all the dependency and mock data for the dependencies. And the key annotation used are extend with the Mockito extension, Spring extension, mock bin, and inject mocks. And to learn more about Mockito, I recommend you to visit this URL site.mockito.org. I hope you will find this video helpful. Please help me to grow this channel by subscribing, like, comment, and share this video. Thank you.